All right, I think we can go ahead and get started. I have the camera set up a little differently instead of doing the share screen because we have a guest speaker today, and I want to be able to get her from out here rather than back here, so I want to be able to use my laptop for that. Some announcements before we get started. First, and perhaps most important, your next class session, April 6th, is entirely online. Use the Zoom link for that. So turns out I'm going to be in Los Angeles at that time now, so it would be really hard to for me to be here to come back for that. But I think
you can do it.
You think? Right. Well, Elizabeth, for part of her grade for this class, is doing a presentation on Project Coach and what she's been doing as an actual administrator. And so she's going to share that with you online. And plus I have a bevy of information to go through online as well. I wanted to say great job publicly to everyone who presented the first time already. I'm trying to remember everyone who was there. John, Bert,
Kayla,
Lynn, Kayla, Elizabeth. Is there anyone else? Oh, no, Kristen. We had I mean, we were worried we were only going to have 4 or 5. We ended up having like seven, I think. So just so the rest of you are aware of that, that group was not huge. It was only 7 people, so it could get small too. So just be prepared.
Yeah.
But for the rest of you, one thing that the first group did that really seemed to work well was they involved the group that had them talking a lot, working together, which really, I think everyone left there feeling like they learned something and they were engaged the whole time. So that was great. So I wanted to mention that. What else did I want to mention? Oh, summer registration. Olivia asked the question, when can we register? I said, I think you can now. If you need an override to register for any of those courses, please shoot me an email. When you shoot me an email, send your MOX ID with the CRN number for the course, because I don't have all the CRNs memorized. So if you do that, then I can just forward the email, and when the person gets the email, then they go in the system and allow you to register. Otherwise, did you have a registration hold on your account? Okay.
I hadn't tried.
Okay. If you do have a hold, you have to email me that too, because I'm the person who can take your hold off for that. So today, we have a guest speaker, Deb Rosno. I don't know if any of you know her or not. She works for Hamilton County Schools, and I'm not going to give a lot on her background because she will when she comes in. She's talked to my classes for this might be her 4th time in a row coming in to talk with this class. I was going to do a panel of administrators, but I think I'm going to hold off on that. I've been doing a panel in the summer classes too, and I think we'll have one there. I have been trying to do one almost every semester. Have a panel of administrators come in. Nice thing about Hamilton County is they always are willing to cooperate. I just had a meeting this last week with 4 of the learning community directors, which I thought it was really awesome that they were all willing to come into one spot and meet. Basically, it was what we could do to make program improvements here and work with Hamilton County to make sure. I want to make sure we're preparing. Sorry, Kristen, administrators at least who are prepared for what Hamilton County wants, and not because we don't have great students elsewhere, but because the majority of our students end up in Hamilton County schools, and we want to make sure that you're prepared to take on a role there if you want to do that. So today, kind of an interesting situation. So I got married a year and a half ago. And the gentleman who married us, the officiating person, his name is Rodney, who, by the way, that's a completely different story. He was horrible. It was so comical. He's getting married today to my really good friend, Nicole. Nicole she's a great friend of mine, lives here in town, and that's why we had Rodney officiate our wedding. And it was his first wedding. He's like 25 or something. He was shaking. And at one point he said, because it was in the program, it said presentation of the bride and groom. And he said, and now there will be a presentation by Barry and Glynis. And I turned to the audience and I said, oh no, there will not be a presentation. So then we got done. And he said to everyone when we left, okay, at this point, you're supposed to pick up your chairs and take them across the street to a different location, which was not true. You only had to move from where the service was to where the tables were. So anyway, long story, a little less long. Rodney and Nicole are getting married this afternoon in less than an hour. And I know I'm not going to make the wedding. And my wife, bless her heart, I do want to. I do want, because I kind of want to just see what I can do to make their wedding memorable. But anyway, right? Hey, I have a presentation I'd like to make. But my wife is going to the wedding at 1:30, but the reception is to follow. And I really, really would like to make some of it, given the connection that we have, especially with weddings. So. I was contemplating ending fairly early today, and I hesitate to. I literally have enough material to go till 6:30 today. I know I do, and I always have. I mean, I have 4 PowerPoints like in reserve, things I can do if I don't have enough material. I never come into a class knowing I can't go forever. I don't like it when people. What I don't want to do is end early and have people feel like they didn't get their money's worth. So what I would probably do is add something online, meaning I would ask you to view a PowerPoint and make some comments or something like that online. What I would like from you, which means we would probably be done around 2:30, to between 2:30 and 3 today. I'm guessing if the wedding's at 1:30, if it says reception to follow, wouldn't you think around 3-ish you'd be safe walking in? Anyone?
That sounds great.
Yeah, 3-ish. The food's already being served around 3.
See, I don't know.
It takes forever. You get your seat and you sit down. You have to make small talk forever until finally the bride and groom come back and take a picture.
So we can probably go till 3:30 or 4.
I think.
Thank you. All right, we can go at least till 3:30 or 4.
You need to be there by that.
But you might need to be there early. Just be
It's
respectful.
kind of awkward to walk in once the party's already started.
Right. Oh, yeah, it would be. And it's only a half mile from here, so
Yeah, I think 3 sounds great.
really?
2:30, yeah.
Okay. So two things. One, if you feel like you would rather not do that, I would respect that entirely, but I would want you to let me know during our first break today. Because I'm also comfortable going till 4:30. If you can find me in confidence, or even shoot me a text, you have my number, and I'll be sure and check my phone during our first break. That way you won't get stoned by other people.
Watching you.
But we're all looking at Elizabeth.
I'm here, guys, I'm here.
The other piece is this, and you know, I have to be careful here what to say, but teacher evaluations are very important here for our jobs, and I don't want evaluations that say, you know, cut corners and things like that. That's really important, because next year is my tenure year. You go up for tenure in your 6th year, and if you don't get tenure, it's really bad. If you do get tenure, you get a 10% pay bump, and then you basically get to keep your job unless you're really horrible. And I really want to get tenure next year. So if you feel like this is something that would make you lower your rating of me as an instructor, text me during break. Because I
Most
would.
people would hire it.
Really? Maybe we can work out a deal. If you do your evaluations now while I watch, oh my gosh, I would so lose my job. So we won't do that. Okay. So I'm sure Deb will be here in a minute. We said 12:40. until she gets here, the first thing, and she's already here, so we don't even have to say what the first thing is. Look at you. Come on, let's get you a nice comfy seat of honor. You want, or you want to just sit?
Yeah.
Let me clear up things. There. Look at you. Thank you. So that's just a perfect segue then into me not having to introduce our first activity, which will be a case study. So let me welcome to your class today, Deb Rosno, EDS. Deb completed our program like a couple years ago.
17.
Yeah, she was on the 9-year program, was it? I don't know. Right, but she completed our program, and at that time she was an instructional coach in Hamilton County. And now I'll let her tell you what her title is. I know she's involved in the Opportunity Zone schools. But the reason I asked Deb to come in is twofold. One, she has experience now working in basically it's an administrative capacity, and you're overseeing staff. And this is an instructional leadership class where you're talking about how to improve instruction. Who better than someone who has experience doing that? And also, many of you are going to be or are administrators, and the relationship and how you work with instructional coaches is important. I tell the story. I never knew what an instructional coach was until I moved to Tennessee. We didn't have them. We do now in Wisconsin, but that was not a thing that we had. When I think about how awesome that would be for helping teachers, and not just targeting low-performing teachers, but helping, like we talk about, you've got those high achievers who always want to be fed too. Having someone who they can work with to do that, I just think it's awesome. But you need to understand a little bit about that relationship too. So I'd like Deb to tell us a little bit about her story, and I know you guys have questions for her too, and if you don't mind, I've got the little recording thing on you too, because we have one student joining us from out of town, and then we also have a few people who aren't here who'll be watching the video. Okay, awesome. Also, the gift there is for you. Thank you for coming in. Yeah.
Thanks. Well, it's great to be here. Let's just put Dr. So anyway, 12 schools that have the potential for the greatest growth. So there are urban schools, there's 7 elementary schools, 3 middle schools, and 2 high schools. They sit in a feeder pattern. And so they're kids that, or schools that have the potential to really grow and support students that, honestly have just been neglected for lots and lots of years. High poverty, high diversity, high amounts of teacher turnover, or new teachers working within those buildings. And so just the idea of working in something, again, that was new and different and exciting was something that drew me to that work. So it's been an adventure. I'll never forget, like, Jill walked down to my office and I was leaving. It just happened to be my anniversary, so I had a big thing of flowers for my husband in my bag, and she's like, "Where do you take these flowers? Come down to my office. I want to talk to you." I was thinking, what do you want? So she proposed the idea, and just seeing it come to fruition. I would say there's still so much work to do. It's kind of like when I started Battle, or helped to start Battle. I didn't start Battle on my own. But just that idea that this work is going to be really, really hard, and it's going to take years. It's not something that can magically happen in 2 years or 1 year. And there's a lot of pressure for growth, instant growth, like we need to see results now. But it took a long time for many of these schools to get where they were, and it's going to take time to move them forward. But it's been exciting to see the progress that we're making. The 3 main themes are focus, consistency, and hope. And so consistency is probably, I would say, one of the most difficult characteristics to build in a team. And I learned that even when I was in my other roles as coaching and as a director, that getting everybody to be on the same page.
You're good.
Okay. At the same time and moving in the same direction can be incredibly hard. And so as a leader, you have to continue to come back to what is our goal? What are we trying to accomplish? And how do we allow for some freedom and flexibility in what we're doing without changing the message or changing the kind of the approach. Because it is difficult, and I would say it's sometimes incredibly frustrating when people have knee-jerk reactions to things. You know, even with the benchmarking that Hamilton County's done this year, you know, things like, oh, kindergarten didn't perform well. What kind of test prep can we give kindergarten? Well, we shouldn't be giving 5 and 6 year olds test prep. I'm sorry, that just goes against everything within me as an educator. So I think just knowing like we need to focus on good instruction. And as a leader, the job is to ensure that that is consistently happening. So that's a little bit about who I am and what I do. So I'm glad Dr. Cameron came back. So what else would you like me to address or talk about?
Well, there are so many things.
Okay.
I mean, we all have questions, I'm sure, but one of the things I wanted to ask you about was, do coaches assist with the RTI process?
As far as like being on the team to determine RTI?
Or developing interventions or?
So in almost all of our opportunities in schools for literacy, we developed a model for RTI. It's called RISE, it's Reading Intervention for Student Express, where students, teachers, and the team really determine which students need that additional support. And so they go into this model for 45 minutes. So there's a guided reading specialist with 2 interventionists, and they receive support with reading comprehension, phonics, word decoding, and then writing. And so they move through 3 15-minute rotations. It's incredibly intense, but it gets great growth. So the role of the coach in that is to help support the guided reading specialist, who does the planning for that with the students, who she might go in and coach the guided reading specialist or the interventionist to help ensure that their practices are meeting the needs of their students. Okay. So that's the primary role that they play in that. There's a few elementary schools where the coach does sit in on the RTI meeting if a student is being recommended for a referral. But that usually is not very often because we still have literacy coaches and math coaches. And so if they feel like it's going to be a referral leading to testing just specifically in literacy, they might be included in that. But if there's the bigger picture, it gets a little bit uncomfortable because they haven't seen they just primarily focus on literacy.
Sure. And I want to open it up for questions, but one of the questions I have is how, and you can describe the relationship too, but so you have an administrator or principal and you have a teacher, and then I don't know if you would put a coach maybe in the middle there, but you mentioned before building trust of teachers. How do you do that so that you're not reporting back to principals on their performance so that they feel like you're a spy for the administrator? Does that make sense? So to me, it seems like a delicate dance because as an administrator, I would be like, hey, how's Bert doing? I know you've been working with him. And if you say, well, he's really struggling with this, this, and this, then I'll be like, well, I'm building the case to get rid of Bert, so thanks for that. And then Bert's going to tell everyone, man, I had this coach work with me and now I don't have a job. Don't do let that. So
Notice how you
yeah, I mean, right. Low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
So that, we initially did, and we really haven't done any, I don't think as much unless Sonia and Zach and Jill have done more with the administrators and meeting around coaching. We did talk about we need to come back to that with administrators. But as far as like establishing that, like a lot of the work that we've done with coaches has been very embedded in Diane Sweeney's student centered coaching work. And so she is one of the national experts on coaching, and her focus, both in all K-12, is the coaching stays centered on the students. It's about what you see happening with students. What is this teacher doing with the students to yield a specific result? And so a lot of times if an administrator approaches a coach, and very rarely like has that happened lately. So it has happened in the past few years, that if an administrator approaches a coach and says, so how is Bert doing? I might say something like, well, what I noticed the students doing in Bert's class was X, Y, and Z. And what we've talked about is trying this and this. This is what you might see. This is what we worked on. This is what you might see to follow up. But specifically keep your eyes on this group of students or this particular student, or how the instruction is flowing in this class. So it keeps the coach out of being that evaluative sort of role. And I try to remind the coaches to always be sure that you are very transparent with teachers. Be very transparent with, hey, this is what's working well. Here's what these moves that you're making that are supporting this student. You know, if I have a conversation with Ms. Anthony, here's more than likely, like what our conversation will center on. So, so there's very few things that are hidden. I tried in the past when I've worked with administrators to encourage them, please don't ask a coach. If you put a teacher on an improvement plan and your goal is to push them out, please don't ask the coach to go in and work. You know, that teacher can come and ask for support from the coach, but the minute you assign a coach to a teacher that you're trying to move on, the role of the coach is to help the teacher get better. You know, so the ultimate goal is I'm going to pour everything I can into that teacher to help improve their practice. So if that's going to be counterintuitive or counteractive to what you're trying to do, that could create some issues. So many times now, not just in the schools where I work, but across the district, in most cases when a teacher is put on an improvement plan, part of that plan is for them to seek out the coach, not for the coach to go to them. Because it also sets coaching up in this light of, oh, you're the coach, you get to work with all the teachers who need help. You know, like, and coaches need to work with your superstar teachers, those teachers that are your irreplaceables, because they want to grow as well. So it's important to set that precedent that everybody has room for a coach. You know, we frame it in the fact that, you know, Tiger Woods has a coach, you know, the Chicago, whatever, Bulls, no, is that the basketball team?
It is.
Yeah. Sorry, I was watching about the game last night, and they have a coach. You know, the highest level performing people in our world and people who get paid millions of dollars have coaches. You know, so it's not just about helping, you know, we want to help struggling teachers, we want to help first year teachers, but your teachers that are going to grow and yield great results are also need that extra eye in their classroom.
Yeah, I've never really thought about it like that. You're right. I mean, outside of education, most professionals have people to help them continue to grow.
Yeah, there's some great research articles that have been written, and I cannot recall his name off the top of my head, but we've read them with coaches. He's a surgeon, like one of the world's best surgeons, and he's written about the coaching he's received, just as he's performing surgery, of inviting different professionals in to watch him perform surgery and talk about how he can get better. So, you know, it's really that idea of let's get an extra set of eyes in here and look at how do we improve what's happening, because sometimes when you're in the moment, it's hard to capture everything that's going on. I'm assuming everybody in here has been a teacher at one point. You know, when you're engaged with kids, you know, you miss certain things along the way, so.
We've got a couple who are close.
Oh,
to-
I'm a coach.
Yeah.
Oh, okay,
For a basketball.
okay, there you
So
go.
I feel like it's pretty.
So questions you guys have for Deb?
I'll start.
So last summer, Hamilton County pushed out a lot of new initiatives. And it was really hard to see the teachers kind of go through that initiative fatigue so quickly. How do you and your coaches address that initiative fatigue while still saying you gotta do your job? Like,
Yeah, so I think it comes down to prioritizing, right? So like we want teachers to be, you know, 100% every day at their very best. I want coaches to be 100% at their very best. So thinking about how do we structure and scaffold introducing, you know, all of these new initiatives. So, and they're great things, right? But like as far as Mastery Connect, I was like, we're putting it on hold, right? Like we need to get kids engaged and excited about learning in August and September. And I don't want them worrying about, you know, Mastery Connect, because I want them to focus on pulling kids together. So Canvas, we put that on hold, right? Like it's a great tool, it's wonderful. That most of our kindergarten teachers, I really love kindergarten. I feel like I'm taking on kindergarten today. And like, that's the last of their concerns. They just want kids to be able to enter their lunch number correctly, you know? So really thinking about and planning with them. So here are all these things that we're looking at. How do we gradually begin weaving these in ways that are comfortable for the teachers, but also going to the teams and saying what's going to be most comfortable for you, right? Like this is happening. This is the expectation. When would it work for you? And, you know, there are some schools where they're like, hey, let's tackle it during grade level planning. And there were other places where they were like, we would rather do an after school thing. You know, so honoring really what the teachers are seeing and doing, because many of the teachers, especially that the coaches work with in the opportunity zone, they're in some tough situations. You know, and it's hard, you know, when you come into school on Tuesday and find out that the student who, you know, sits right there, you know, was involved in a shooting, you know, on Saturday night. So that's not like you just immediately say, oh, well, that's too bad, but we have to do reading groups, you know, like those sort of things have to be processed and dealt with. And so we've really just tried to scaffold those along the way. So I would say about 90% in elementary anyway, are on board with Mastery Connect. Still trying to bring kindergarten along, but I just am like, you know, if you don't see a place for it, then that's okay. And then Canvas, we'll get there. So.
Now, when you say Canvas, are you referring to the online learning management system?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had taught at a different university on Canvas, and your summer classes will be in Canvas.
Yeah,
So.
It
It is? Okay.
So yeah, the district rolled it out, so it's supposed to be like a user-friendly platform, which will be great once we can get everybody on it, because it will keep people from getting lost in the Google file trail
Right.
of life. But yeah, it was just a lot at one time that teachers were being asked to do.
Yeah.
So,
You mentioned that teacher turnover is one of the big, like, things you're trying to fix with the ozone schools. Like, what about, like, how do you fix that, or like how do you address that?
yeah.
And then like administration turnover too.
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I think that the approach that the district has taken this time will make a difference. One being that, you know, formerly there was the iZone, you know, which was basically encompassed 5 of the 12 schools that are in the opportunity zone. And under the iZone, they had 3 people supporting them. 3, you know. One was managing the budget, one was a coach, and one was helping with curriculum. You know, when you look at that kind of work and you only give 3 people, those, you know, the support system, it's not going to go anywhere. It doesn't matter how many millions of dollars you give to those schools. 3 people cannot do the work. So as Jill worked with Dr. Johnson, there's a team of about, I would say, close to 20 people that support these 12 schools. Our work is solely devoted to supporting those schools. So you've got Jill, and then you've got Zach and Sonia. You've got literacy, which has myself and Brandon, Hubbard Heights. You've got math, which has Denver, and science, which has Anthony. So you've got the curriculum support there. Then you've got a behavior specialist. You have 2 new teacher coaches. You have, who else is on that team? Becca Malott is the data coordinator that simply focuses on data for the Opportunity Zone. You have people devoted to just special ed that work within the Opportunity Zone. So it's almost like this whole little layer of support where we're trying to wrap our arms around these schools and help. Jill is very meticulous in picking administrators. To my knowledge, there's not going to be any turnover with administration this year. There may be one, but I'm not sure if that's, I don't know, like I was just told, hey, this may happen, and other than I'm like, okay, it doesn't have to be literacy.
Are you talking about specifically the Opportunity Zone?
Yeah, in the Opportunity Zone. So yeah, there's not really any that I know of. And then as far as teachers, just thinking outside the box, like how can we honor the work that teachers are doing? So one of the initiatives that Jill has set up for retention is identifying model classrooms. So teachers were able to apply to be a model classroom, and so they, what they're agreeing to is to be like the model for what this subject, what this area looks like. So for example, at Howard, there's, how many of you guys have? 6, yeah, that are gonna agree to be like, this is the model. So when somebody is struggling in English language arts, they can go observe Ashley Cox's classroom and get ideas. Or if they're struggling in CTE, they can go to and see, here's what it should look like. So they're receiving, they receive a $2,500 stipend now, and then they'll get another one in September.
The model classroom people?
Yeah. And then they also are receiving close to $1,000 to spend on their classroom for supplies, materials that they need. So I think there are 30 total, which I think will definitely help support, because you've got them spread across almost every building. But it also allows us to really help, again, those irreplaceable teachers, those teachers we want to keep and we want to help support and we want to elevate a little bit. And they will also be responsible for leading collaboratives every month. So they'll just basically push out, hey, I'm going to be meeting on planning effective writing strategies for 7th grade. Anybody that wants to come can come. We'll be meeting from 3:30 to 5:30. Teachers get paid a stipend to come to that. So it's another way of embedding a lot of professional development. So that's one retention strategy that's been put in place. Yeah, so eventually, hopefully the goal is that teachers will stay. Teach for America is going to be supporting and helping fill positions in the Opportunity Zone. They have a 2-year commitment. Project Inspire is involved with that as well. And almost every Project Inspire resident from last year took a job in the Opportunity Zone this year. So
Is that a public education foundation program?
yeah. So hopefully this kind of success breeds success and growing our own and keeping people within. Of course, the goal would never be, there are people who definitely can wrap their arms around urban students, but there are some people who it's just not the thing, right? And they're phenomenal teachers, and I've seen it time and time again where they're a great teacher, but they look like a horrible teacher in an urban setting, because it's just not where their passion is. But if you get them into a different type of setting, they suddenly it's like, wow, who are you? So we definitely don't want teachers to stay because they feel guilty or because they feel like they'll fail if they're moving on. But we want people to be there who have the passion for the work, and it's hard work. It really is hard work.
Is there any, you mentioned monetary remuneration for people who become model
Mhm.
classrooms. How about for like scores going up or any, is there any of that
Yeah.
kind of thing?
And I can't tell you like off the top of my head, all of them exactly. So I know for math and for math this year, they'll get a bonus in high school. I think it's algebra is where she's starting, specifically algebra 1. And then there's also a signing bonus for high school teachers that are coming in to teach in the mathematics. And that's primarily because those are the hardest positions to fill. We've had a classroom, I was just in one at Howard the other day. They've gone all year without a teacher. Until last week. And what, geometry. Yeah, they've spent all year long with subs. So,
That's not, okay, that's not a difficult to staff area though, is it?
Any math class. Right?
Really?
yeah.
How do you
Wow.
even begin to teach with different subjects, or was it like one specific sub, different subs every day?
We might have one for me.
What do the lesson plans look like? Who writes them?
Yeah, right, we'll do that later. We'll do that
Come on
later.
now.
We'll do that
Sorry.
later.
Did we have that out? Good.
I mean, those are valid questions. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a great question to
Yeah.
ask.
Yeah.
Just curious,
Yeah, so it just goes to show, like, and as a team, like our leadership team, we meet every Monday. And so, and it's hard because it does pull us from schools, but it's important that we spend that time together, knowing where each other's work is. That we spent actually a couple of weeks, almost 3, reading through research articles and looking, does monetary incentives help increase? Does it help increase scores? Does it help increase retention? And there's no solid research to show that it does. There's nothing that says that it doesn't. So, most of us, when Jill put it out for a vote, said, let's not go there. But within the opportunity zone, we're also receiving a lot of money from the state under the partnership agreement. And that's a big push from them. They want it as part of the grant. So, when you're getting money, when you're getting millions of dollars from the state, and they've let us have pretty much everything we wanted, we weren't to concede and compromise on some areas. So, math was the area.
In a study that I did with a student at Orchard Knob Middle, we did teacher turnover there. We found that administrative support and connection to the school was way more of a factor in retaining teachers than money was.
Yeah.
Because we interviewed teachers who stayed and surveyed teachers who left, 23 teachers who had left within the last 5 years, and very few of them said money would have made a difference. But
Yeah.
those two things did make a difference.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's the key. Like I have found, even with the coaches that I work with, what my support looks like to them is different for every one of them, right? So like with one of the coaches, like I know I need to go just check in with her every week. I have to schedule time. I have to, even if it's an hour, if it's 45 minutes, or it might be 3 hours. But that's what support looks like to her. If I don't stop by, I get in emails, everything okay? Am I doing okay? So, but others are like, if I just send them an email. So some of them need FaceTime. They need to see me. They need to talk through. They need to process. Others are good with a quick email, some text, but as far as how I support them and what I support them in, I usually every month send out just an email, and then I have a Google Doc that they can sign up on for 3-hour chunks across the month. So what do you want me to do when I come in? How do you want me to support you? And so across, for example, the month of February, for 3 of the coaches, it was going into classrooms. They were like, this is a teacher I've been coaching. This is a group that's not moving. But, how can I help better support? And for some, it was brainstorming through grade level planning meetings. They have to meet with grade levels every week. They're like, all of the grade levels are great except for these 2. I need a thinking partner on how to make this a more positive experience and a more productive experience, because we're losing a lot of time. So, so again, I think it's figuring out, what do teachers, what kind of support do they need? What kind of support do coaches need, to keep them going and motivated?
I have a question. So from your perspective, and then also from like a coach's perspective, since you were in that role, how do you deal with like conflict with a teacher of like, maybe they don't want to like follow your suggestions, stuff like that?
So I will say as a teacher, I'll start there.
Okay.
As a teacher, I feel like the number one goal is to meet students' needs.
Yeah.
And so if a teacher decides they want to go a different direction, as a coach, lots of questions about, okay, so talk to me about your students, talk to me about how this direction is going to help. And then giving the teacher a little bit of freedom to try it, but knowing that we're gonna go outside the bounds a little bit, but we need to keep a tight rein on, is this working for students? So a perfect example of that is a school where they've been making incredible progress. Their students are making incredible progress, but they decided they wanted to do something different in reading. So they went and pulled out the basals. And again, I don't have an issue with basals, other than the fact that when we walked in, they didn't have a single lesson plan. For 2 weeks, they just had the kids open the books and read. No plan, no instruction. And it wasn't just me that saw it. It was the coach that saw it. It was the principal that saw it. It was administration that saw it. When you would ask the kids, what are you guys working on in literacy? What are you doing? They're like, oh, we just read stories from this every day. But then when you would talk to them, they couldn't even tell you what they were reading, and most of them couldn't read the story. So, and so when I would ask the teacher, what are you doing during this time? Because when I would walk in, they were just sitting at their table on their computer. So, so that kind of, we had to kind of rein that back in because it wasn't meeting the needs of the students. So I think it's important to let teachers have a voice in what they're teaching. They know their students much better than I do. But at the same time, helping to be sure, is this what the students need, or is it just going to be easier or simpler? So.
And where I thought coaching difference from the opportunity zone and then the other line zone. I know you mentioned that there's math and literacy coaches, and then I know in the other areas they have more instructional coaches. Do you think that the opportunity zone will follow that and do more just straight instructional coaches, or keep it separate?
No, they'll keep them separate. The role of an instructional coach is like taking a piece of gum and stretching it thin, so you have to know a lot, you have to have your hands in a lot of different curriculum. So what I've seen, and our middle schools have instructional coaches, and what I saw in that role is they primarily had to know a lot about good instruction, but couldn't really dig in deep to content. And so they're now, that's not to say that middle school coaches don't know anything about content, because they do. It just takes a long time to learn all of those areas. So I know I can say without any shadow of a doubt, at least as long as the opportunity zone continues to exist, those coaches will remain separate. And there's only one school right now that shares a math or two schools that share a math coach. Everybody else has dedicated full-time math and literacy coaches at elementary. But the plan for next year is to find another math coach. And that was just because when budgets all kind of settled out, it was too late to pull anybody out of the classroom. You don't do that. You don't go after a great teacher in August without a lot of repercussions. So Francisco has moved between Barter and Hardin this year. But both of those buildings definitely need a full-time math coach. So.
How did y'all approach the changing of the culture in some of those schools?
Well, in some cases, it's still changing.
Well, I know the process takes a while, so
Yeah.
I was just wondering.
Yeah, I think really the same way. Again, like for a lot of those schools, you had a lot of shared people, you had a lot of people in and So just being sure that, you know, administration was sending the same message, that they were willing to dig in and, you know, let their teachers know we're in this together. So I spend more time really in not middle school, but in the elementary schools. The administrators, they're very visible. They're, you know, in some cases, they have to work really hard because they have to learn, like, when a student's having a meltdown, you know, like how big of a meltdown is that, you know? You know, so they're just constantly there and available, and I think that has helped most teachers. And just very clear expectations. I mean, anybody that teaches and works in the opportunity zone can tell you, focus, hope, consistency. That is the mantra everybody lives by. You know, one of the things that I think was incredibly impactful is in August, we had an Urban Education Institute to launch today. And it was like a huge celebration. I mean, like balloons and food and, you know, like, it truly, I think for the first time in a long time, made teachers feel like you're a superstar, you know, like we're here to help support you. And so the whole day was geared around working with students in poverty, working with students, you know, who have had trauma, and how do you take care of yourself when you work in this environment? So very little was devoted to content. It was not a content day. And John King, the former education secretary, I think was his title under Obama, he came and he was the keynote speaker. And he talked about his struggle as coming out of poverty, and, you know, and then in January, we had another one, but it was just a half day on one of our PD days. So it's that bringing everybody together, and sometimes that can be a huge thing. But at the same time, it's important, it's critical, because we all understand we're all in this together. So that has helped. There's still some cultural shifts that need to happen with parents, you know, and the people that I forgot that are not because they're not important, that we have 2 community coordinators in the Opportunity Zone. So John Cunningham and Melissa Graham work to help coordinate all of these services, United Way, and any organization that's not educational that supports those schools in any way. So that's been a game changer, I think, as well, to help also get other people in the building, has helped teachers see others sort of, oh, we're shifting a little bit here. But they're coming in with more intentionality and purpose than just before, where it was like, hey, can I bring my little red wagon of books and read to your kids, you know, which is great, but how do we make that very intentional? So.
I have a question too.
Okay.
Not really about coaching, so I apologize, but I work in Cleveland, so I don't know fully my
Okay.
Everybody knows, but I facilitate a lot of student teachers, and there's anxiety about the ozone simply because it's a different walk of life than they've ever known.
Mm-hmm.
Most of the time, the student teachers I facilitate. So I want to assure them. I want to obviously like assure them. I guess my question is, in a nutshell, how can I assure them that they'll be okay versus, I mean, I'm assuming that by the time you have an improvement plan, that's like a nail in the coffin. They don't want to ruin their career
Right.
by, you know, they want a job.
Mhm.
They don't want to ruin their career by, maybe that's not the kind of population that I'm most gifted with. But what if I get in and then, you know, now I'm scrutinized and then now I'm.
Yeah, right.
So
Yeah.
how do you navigate that?
Yeah. So a couple of things, that just a couple of practical suggestions, and then ideally, so our new teacher coaches are there for that specific reason, right? Like, we don't ever want a new teacher to feel like, oh, this is just going to be a disaster, right? Because again, we see it time and time again where their room is beautiful and cute and straight out of Pinterest and Teachers Pay Teachers until the kids come in, right? And then after day one, they're in tears and thinking, what have I done? You know, so that is exactly why Brent and Jill are there, to assure them you have support. Our goal is for you to not fail, because you know, when you fail, we fail, or we have failed you. So we don't ever want that to happen for them. Just a practical suggestion would be, you know, schedule a visit. Come, you know, bring them down and let them see. I had a leadership fellow, which is through PEF, if you're not familiar with that program is. Shadow me, she teaches at McConnell. She's always taught at McConnell, but she wanted to see what my job was like. And at the end of the day, she was like, this is nothing like what I thought it was gonna be. And I was like, is that a good thing or is that a bad thing? She's like, no. She's like, this is amazing work. You guys are doing amazing work. So I just thought we were gonna go into buildings and see fights and people yelling and screaming. And I was like, no, that's not, you know, those things happen, but they happen everywhere, right? My husband teaches at Hickson Middle School. He's like, we have a fight on a daily basis, you know. So I think it's I think it's just kind of that perception of what it's going to be like. But her comment was very validating because I do think there are misconceptions, you know. And I know when I started the work, you know, and Jill said K-12, I was like, oh gosh, that means I have to go to Brainerd High School. You know, I'd never been in Brainerd High School. I was terrified when I walked in Brainerd because, you know, they were letting out of the lunchroom and they were loud and they were talking and they were, you know, laughing. Then I thought, what is wrong with this? You know, this is like high school. This is what high school should be like. So now I love going to Brainerd High School. I mean, it's, you know, the kids greet me when I'm there. They don't know who I am, you know, but, you know, or if I'm carrying something, they'll be like, hey, do you need some help? And most of them are genuine. Some of them are trying to get out of going back to class, but, you know, so I think, you know, just spending time and realizing it's not what you perceive that it's going to be. And that there are students who truly are there, who they want to be successful, you know, they really want to be successful. And they're investing every ounce of energy in that. And we want the teachers to be successful.
Yeah, I think as outsider, like not being part of Hamilton County, I didn't know all those supports were there.
Mm-hmm.
And so that like makes people that aren't familiar with.
Yeah, well, there are people in Hamilton County, like this teacher from McConnell. I had no idea, you know, so
that's helpful to
yeah.
to help them.
Yeah. And I think
mentor program that he started is really, has done a really good job with teachers. I've seen personally.
Who?
Yeah, Brent Page.
Oh,
Yeah, you talked about him one time.
Yeah.
graduate of the program.
He is.
My mentee is, she like has been really, really supportive. She's a first year teacher teaching the opportunity then, but it's really good.
Yeah, he's, they invest a lot of time and energy in making sure they're successful.
Are there any plans of getting all that information out into the rest of the county? Because like you said, you teachers in Hamilton County really don't know what's going on in the ozone schools.
You know, Jill being Jill has tried to publicize as much as
Yeah.
possible, like videos on Twitter and on Facebook. You know, for the Urban Education Institute, they did this amazing video called Why I Teach for Opportunity. And they interviewed like tons of teachers about why I'm here, why it's important. So I don't know, it's been there. I don't know like how else to get the word out. There's some incredible things happening and going on. And again, not to sugarcoat it, there are some not so great days, but there's more good than not, I guess.
Sure.
Do you foresee any of the implementations that are going on in the ozone, which are probably going on because it's the ozone, but starting to lead into the rest of the county? I know there's one new teacher coordinator for the entire rest of the county.
Yeah. Yes, I do. You know, and even so 2 years, not this year. I still have them this year, but last year, because the coaches were spread so incredibly thin, we were trying to figure out, you know, when you think about a pond or a pebble in a pond with the ripples, like how do you increase your ripples? You know, how do you increase your outreach? So one of the things that we decided to do at elementary was to start what we call literacy anchors, because it was just impossible for coaches to get to all of the teachers. The coaches were drowning. So we decided, what if we could have one person at every grade level in every elementary school become the literacy anchor? So they are the person that's kind of responsible for being the expert in literacy for their grade level. Now, that's not to say they, will have as much knowledge or training as the coach, but at least they could come and get professional development and take it back to their team. So when their grade level comes together, and that third grade level team is together and they're planning literacy, we at least have that one teacher on that team who's like the anchor for that team. Because we had a lot of grade levels last year and there were 4 new teachers on the team. Like they were all like, none of us is the most experienced. So I pulled them once a month to just do deeper training with them and build their knowledge and background a little bit. And so from that helped to begin to solidify the expectations in literacy across the 7 schools. So when you talk about culture change, I guess that would be one way to do it. It also, again, elevated that teacher role. So I want to be a leader, but I don't want to sacrifice my life yet to be a leader. So this year they've done that with the schools outside of the Opportunity Zone. So they have one from each building that they are doing that same sort of idea. So yeah, so there are some things that are beginning to spread. The idea of community support and mimicking what Melissa and John are doing to coordinate that. Because I did learn just more as an observer. That community support can be awesome, but as a principal, it can be incredibly overwhelming. And Dion Upton, who's at Woodmore, is the perfect example of that. When she took the reins of Woodmore, she was overwhelmed for 2 weeks by people who wanted to come in and support Woodmore. And so she, once school started, her teachers rarely saw her because she just had meeting after meeting after meeting. And she felt like this obligation to meet with them because of what had happened at Woodmore, and she didn't want to turn them away, but it was taking away from her role as an administrator. So I think you'll see some of that in the district as well. So I think whatever initiatives that are happening that are feasible and can be financed.
Real question.
Yeah.
One of, and I want to be sure and respect your time too, one of the activities that we're going to do today is we're working on coaching stems, question stems for when we do post-observation conferences as administrators. I guess I was just thinking, do you have any advice or suggestions for ways to have that conference with people that seems less directive and more getting them to notice? Any advice there?
So part of it is, I think, knowing, number one, that teachers are going to be on this continuum, right? And I was there for the longest time, even 11 years into my career, 13 years into my career. The first time Jan Richardson ever said, "What did you notice about your students?" I was like, "I don't notice anything. I noticed I got through this lesson." That's what I noticed. But I think asking, probing for what was the focus of the lesson? Did you accomplish what you wanted to for your focus or your goal? What did you notice in students? What moves do you think you made that helped support students? So what opportunities did students have to learn? And what opportunities are you going to find tomorrow to continue to help support students? Those are, I think, some good probing questions that help teachers learn, I need to kind of reflect on what's going on here. So I usually those 4 are what I probe for. What are your next steps?
I like the focus on what the students are doing in particular. Because you're right, a lot of, especially probably younger, less experienced, I should say, teachers tend to focus all on themselves and less on what they're getting back. Okay. How about the last topic we're going to be working on in this class is professional development. So, I don't know. I'm older than you, I think. So professional development for me was always a sit and get model. Have you seen any models that work particularly well in your experience, professional development models that last beyond a workshop, maybe? Besides coaching,
Yeah.
I would think is the most effective.
Yes, yeah. So what do you mean last beyond a workshop?
Well, okay, a lot of professional, I hear people say, I'm going to a PD
Oh,
or I'm having a PD after
Mhm.
school. But a question arises, there are many different models for professional development. And one of the things they're going to do, well, it'll be next week now, is, rank different models for professional development as far as effectiveness. And so the question was, have you seen any particular models to help teachers grow from, I guess, the perspective of an administrator, less of a coach?
okay.
So if I want to plan professional development, are there any particular models that you see as more effective?
Yeah, I think anything that you can do that's job embedded is going to be effective. So, and I'm not sure as far as the other learning communities, but we've tried to continue to hold on to this idea of labs in the opportunity zone. So finding half days for teachers to at a particular grade level to come together during the school day. So typically subs are hired. And they'll spend, so let's say we're doing a 3rd grade lab and then we're going to do a 4th and 5th grade lab for departmentalized ELA teachers.
What's a lab?
So, okay. So, so the teachers are going to come together around a particular practice. So in literacy, it might be whole group instruction. How do we get really effective whole group instruction going in our classrooms? And so there'll be this grade level team with the coach. Usually we really try to encourage administrators to be there, either an AP or a principal, but they'll come together and they will plan a lesson together. One teacher will have already been designated to teach the lesson in his or her classroom as the other colleagues come in and they watch the lesson take place. So the lesson is taught, the teacher along with the grade level team and the coach are collecting evidence from students during the lesson, and then they come out, they debrief that lesson, and they plan for next steps. So then the subs would switch, and they would do the same thing with another grade level.
Okay.
So it keeps it with students at the forefront. So honestly, I think any PD that you can do where students are involved is gonna change teacher practice more quickly or enhance teacher practice. Because it gives you this kind of step outside where it is almost like a lab where you're able to stand at the back and kind of watch what's happening between the instruction and the student versus being so drawn into the instruction that you lose sight of how students are responding to the instruction.
And you mentioned evidence, which provides data, which provides an opportunity to measure improvement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, after school type things, I think do have a place and they can be effective. I think it's important to keep that teacher voice, so we've worked really hard to make sure that teachers have a role or a place in that. So, for years in Hamilton County, we did like literacy support sessions and teachers would come to Brainerd Elementary and they would sit for 2 hours and they would get PD, which was good. Many teachers walked away with some great things. But this last fall, we did what we called the fall festival kind of thing in the nature of being fall. And made it a really big deal. Like Chick-fil-A donated dinner that night and we gave away door prizes, but I recruited teachers to present sessions. So they did 45-minute sessions and participants